All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a book that makes a pretty huge claim that there's one single skill that can make learning everything else way, way easier. The book is The Only Skill That Matters by Jonathan A. Levi, and we're about to find out if it actually lives up to that title. So the book kicks things off with a problem I'm sure you feel every single day: information overload. I mean, just look at this quote. Information doubling every 12 hours. If you feel like you're drowning, well, you're not alone. It's basically impossible to keep up. The author's point is that in this crazy environment, just learning isn't enough anymore. We have to get really, really good at it, or we're going to get left in the dust. Okay, so the problem is this tidal wave of information, right? What's the fix? Well, the book argues it's not about trying harder, it's about learning smarter. And it introduces this big idea it calls the superlearner solution. Yep, the one skill to rule them all. Just so you have some context, this book came out in 2019. It's kind of a mix of self-help and educational psychology, but really its main goal is to give you a hands-on, practical system for learning that's supposedly backed by some serious neuroscience. And this is the big idea at the heart of the entire book, meta-learning. It's a simple idea, but it's incredibly powerful. Instead of just jumping in and trying to learn what you want to learn, you first take a step back and master how you learn. The promise here is pretty incredible. If you can just figure out how your own brain is meant to learn, you can become what the author calls a superlearner. And this quote just perfectly sums up why it's so powerful. Levi basically calls it the ultimate multiplier. I mean, think about it, right? Any time you invest in getting good at meta learning pays you back every single time you try to learn something new for the rest of your life. It's like building a solid foundation before you even think about putting up the walls of the house. Now, to really get how these learning techniques work, the book says we need to understand why they work. And the answer isn't in some fancy modern classroom. Nope, we have to go way, way back. We have to learn like a caveman. This right here is the core of the whole argument. Our modern school system is basically fighting against the way our brains are actually wired. I mean, think about it. Our brains didn't evolve to sit still and memorize abstract facts. They evolved for survival, for remembering visual landmarks, and for telling stories about where the danger is. So the main takeaway here is that these methods aren't just clever little tricks or hacks. The book presents them as a way to get back to our brain's natural state of learning. It's all about working with your brain's love for pictures and stories, instead of fighting against it with boring repetition. And that's supposedly why the information actually sticks. All right, so that's the why, the whole caveman theory. But what about the how? How do we actually do this? Well, this next section is all about the Superlearner Toolkit, the actual practical techniques the book gives you to turn all this theory into reality. So the star of the show, the main tool in the Superlearner Toolkit, is something called the memory palace. It's this ancient technique that taps into our brain's amazing spatial memory. You pick a place you know inside out, like your own house, then you mentally walk through it and place these bizarre, unforgettable images at different spots. So for George Washington, maybe you picture him in your kitchen, literally washing a ton of clothes. It sounds ridiculous, and that's exactly the point. The weirder and more vivid it is, the better it works, because it's tapping right into that old-school caveman wiring. But here's where it gets really powerful. The book says when you combine a technique like the memory palace with a modern tool like spaced repetition, things get crazy. Spaced repetition is basically just software that cleverly reminds you of information right at the moment you're about to forget it. You put those two together, and you've got a system that's built for making memories stick for good. And look, the final piece of the puzzle is all about making this stuff a habit. This isn't about cramming for one exam. The book really hammers home that to truly master something, you have to weave these techniques into your daily life. And then you have to try and teach what you've learned to somebody else. Teaching someone else, that is the ultimate test of whether you really know your stuff. So, okay, the promises are huge, right? Superlearner, master any skill. But does the book actually deliver on that hype? In our final verdict, we're going to stack up the good against the bad and see if it's really worth your time. Let's break it down. On the strings side, the book is super practical. It does a fantastic job of taking complicated brain science and turning it into something you can actually use. But, and this is a pretty big but, the marketing can be a bit much. You see these 10x your memory claims, and it feels a little over the top. And it kind of glosses over the fact that, hey, this stuff takes real time and effort to master. But strip all that away, and you're left with the most important lesson from this book. Whether you actually 10x your memory is up for debate, but the core idea here is rock solid. Using that natural, built-in GPS in your brain, that is a fundamentally better way to learn than just staring at a page hoping something sticks. So when you add it all up, the powerful techniques, the solid science, but docked a few points for the hype and for not quite emphasizing the effort required, we are giving the only skill that matters a final score of 7.4 out of 10. And hey, if this whole idea of learning how to learn has got you excited, we've got a couple more books for you. If you want the deep, hard science behind why all this stuff works, you have to check out Make It Stick. And if you want to know how the pros apply these kinds of principles to become the best in the world, then grab a copy of Peak. And that wraps it up. The book gives you a seriously powerful set of tools. So really, the big question isn't, does this stuff work? It's what are you going to do with it? What is the first skill, the first language, instrument, or subject you'd go after if you knew you could actually master it? Something to think about.